Brother Peter, as of late, we have been studying interpretation of the Word. Interpretation is very, very important, that you interpret things the way they are supposed to be interpreted. We have a story in Kings, 2 Kings chapter 5, of a man by the name of Naaman. And Naaman was a leper. He was a Syrian guy who was a chief of things in his area. And he came to Israel, to the king in Israel, and asked the king of Israel to heal him. And the king said, uh-oh, this guy is trying to start trouble with me by knowing that I'm just a king. I can't do anything for leprosy. But the prophet heard about it, and he came to the king and said, hey, king, send him to me. I'll heal him. And so the king sent him over to the prophet and Elisha. And Elisha said to this Syrian, by the way, he was a Syrian captain, but he was in Jewish captivity. Did you know that the land over there of Judah is in Syria? And this guy was a Syrian guy. And here was a little girl who believed that the prophet could heal Naaman of his leprosy. Over here I read the story in chapter 5, where this little girl was a servant. She was a maidservant of the wife of this captain. And she said to him, Naaman, she said, I would, told his wife, I would, that he would go to my land. See, she was a captive over there. She was an Israelite girl that had been taken away over there and made a slave to this lady. But she knew in her land there was a prophet, and she knew that prophet could heal that king. Wow. If we only knew the God that we serve, that we could go out of the United States of America and tell people if they would come to this God that we serve, they could be healed of the leprosy of sin, and they would be able to be free from sin. Now, this story pictures sin and righteousness, and it pictures that leprosy is a symbol of sin, and men are lepers in the sight of God when in sin. And God said, come to Jesus. We don't have to dip 7 times. We just have to say, God, forgive me. I am a sinner, and I come through Jesus. I say, Jesus, forgive me of my sin. Come in my heart. Save my soul. I may follow you the rest of the days of my life, which I did that. Now, in the nation of Israel, lepers were excluded from worship in the temple of God by the command of Jehovah, which is God. Jehovah God commanded lepers to not be in the congregation. Elisha knew he could not go out and address this leper face on. So he sends him word out there. And this was not true in any other nation. For lepers were allowed to mingle with the rest of the people in other nations. Sin, like leprosy, breaks out the most loathsome to mingle with the rest of the people. And you can see sin on all sides. Sin is like leprosy. It makes everyone hydrous, or everybody gets what it is. Now, if a leper mingled with people and touched people, they got leprosy. And here, sin is the same way. It mingles with people, and they get sin in their life. Like leprosy brings separation in the nation of Israel, the leper could not come into the camp with others. And when anyone came near, he must shout, unclean, unclean. That wasn't so in other countries in the rest of Syria. That was only so with the children of Israel, and God set that up. If you'll go back and study it, you'll find out God set it up. If the moral leper of today had to shout unclean, wow, that would be a terrific Be a terrific racket, wouldn't it? It sure would. If all of those in Israel would, in the USA Senate would all unclean, the building would collapse from the noise. If the camp with the others, when anyone came near, must shout it. Now, moral lepers of today had to shout unclean. There would be a terrific regret. Sin, but God, seemed that no one could cure leprosy but God in the scriptures. Nobody but God could cure leprosy. You remember, they would be cured, but they would have to go to the priest because they had to go through the law, the legal system, the law system that God set up. And their houses had to be cleansed, their houses had to be washed, and then there was a certain amount of days they'd stay out of them, and then they would go look at them, and if the walls were a certain color, they would tear the house down after trying to get it clean. But sin cannot be cured by man, and neither can leprosy at that day been cured by man. So a sinner was death, is doomed to death, and man cannot cure himself, but God seems that no one could cure leprosy but God. Now, all right, let's look. We mentioned here that there are some ways in which the sinner and the leper are not alike. A leper never makes light of his leprosy. He don't make light of it. When he's got leprosy, he is not going to make light. He's not going to laugh. You know, the Bible said there's a day when the people's laughter is evil. The laughter of today is evil. The laughter of today for the things on television is an evil laughter, laughing at the things that people on their way to hell. People laughing about it. People on their way to hell, and other people are laughing, and the sinner is headed toward hell. Never make light of leprosy, but a sinner does make light of sin. The leper knows he is a leper, but the sinner fails to recognize he is a sinner. When a sinner is awakened now, when he's awakened, now we're going to look at the crux of the story. A sinner being awakened to see that he's a sinner and that he's miserable and that he's like Naaman was as a leper, and that sin has got him like that leper, unhappy and miserable, then he's going to do something about it. The gospel of cleansing came to Naaman through a little girl. Not a great woman, but she had a great message. She had a humble position, though she was a servant of Naaman and his wife. She was also a servant of God, or Jehovah. Here's a lesson in the thing necessary to get Naaman in touch with God. God was the testimony of the servant. When this little girl started to testify things in touch with God, was the testimony of the servant. When this little girl stated that testify things started to move, Naaman moved, and the king moved, and then Naaman moved over into Israel. Wow, Naaman was not happy with the message he got from the prophet. He didn't meet the prophet. A messenger went out and told him, hey, go dip 7 times in the Jordan. And he said, hey, I got 2 rivers over there where I live that are better than the Jordan. They're clean and they're everything. But somebody said to him, hey, if he had told you to do some great thing, would you do it? And he said, yes, I would. Well, he said, go do the simple thing and see what God does. And the law of Assyria did not bar Naaman from society, but in Israel, God's law said a leper must be separated. When Naaman came unto Israel, then Elijah treated him as a leper should be treated. And the trouble today is that we would, as trying to make sin respectful. We try to make sin people that sin as great sinners respectful. Can't do it. and God will not have it. So you should treat sinners as a sinner and put them in his place. You can never save a man by putting him back into feeling like he's a cream puff, like he's something good. And when the sinner takes a sinner's place, then he will be saved. There is too much fellowship with sin and compromise with sin. Naaman had to take the leper's place before he was cleansed. The sinner must take the place of the sinner. Now Naaman was willing to go far and do much, but wanted to do things in his own way. And the sinner is much like Naaman, so he is not satisfied with the remedy presented. Man always wants to do something to make it right, for himself to be saved. But God said you can do nothing but ask me. I will forgive you. It's done all in me. Nothing's done in you. It's all done in me, and I give it to you. Now, listen to this. A sinner never does like God's plan, and the reason is God's plan strips the sinner of all his righteousness. See, unrighteous people, they think they're righteous. They put their thumbs on their eyes and say, look, I got $500,000 in the bank. I got a good job. I'm this, I'm that. I do this, I do that. And God said, none of that means a thing to me. I'm the one that gave you all of that. So, I have got it all. And I let you hold some of it and use it. It brings all sinners to the same plane. Naaman dipped 7 times. 7 is the number of God. 6 is the number of the evil man. There is a cleansing for man until no cleansing for man until 6 is submerged in God's 7. In Adam we were marked 6, but in Christ we are marked with 7. So when we come to Christ, we go from the 6 to the 7. When Naaman did what he was told and dipped 7 times. If you read that story over in 2 Kings chapter 5, you'll find out another thing in there that is a very good likeness of being able to dissect a story and tell it. Gehazi, the good servant of Elijah, the good man, went bad. He got in his eye some things in his eye that this man had brought over there, this leper had brought over there. And he brought those, and Gehazi got to wanting those. So he runs after the man and tells him his master had changed his mind. That was a lie. So now he's lying. So he's lying to the man. He has a servant that was a good servant, a servant of Elisha. Can you imagine a servant of Elisha lying? Can you imagine a servant of Elisha coveting the things of the world? Elisha, the man of God, the great man of God. Anyway, this is what sin does. It takes you to degradation. And he ran after the man and told the man, oh, my master changed his mind. We're going to take those things. And then he comes back, and then he lies to Elisha. Elisha says, where you been? And he said, I haven't been anywhere. He said, did not my heart go with you? I mean, Elisha loved his servant Gehazi. But do you know what? Elisha knew he was going to have to separate because of the sin. And he said, I tell you what, Gehazi, you and your family forever is going to carry the leprosy that Naaman left there in the river. Wow. That man's sin brought leprosy to him and his family. Now, let's look at another guy. Let's go down to the prodigal son. We had already looked at Achan. Had we not looked at Achan? Achan sinned. He carried out of the city where they went into Jericho. He carried a goodly garment, and he carried some gold, and he carried some stuff, and he buried it in the sand. And because he did, a curse came on him. And I tell you what, a curse will come on you if you rob God of tithes and offerings. I tell you what, God said everything, Joshua 7 and 8, in chapter 6, in Jericho, everything that's worth anything in Jericho is to go into the house of the Lord. Not one thing, not one jot, one tittle, not one drop, not one piece of clothing, not one piece of gold, not one of anything is to go in your house. It's to all go into the house of the Lord, and it all belongs to God. Well, there was a man there named Achan, and he took a goodly garment, some gold and some silver, and he buried it in his tent, and he brought shame to the house of Israel. And because he did, God allowed many men to get killed, many people to get killed. And he allowed Joshua to go into, Joshua went into a great thing, like a depression. And God said, hey Joshua, get off your face. It's not your fault. It's this guy Achan. He said, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You bring the people in front of you tomorrow morning by the families. And when you find the family that did this, you destroy the family. Hey, Achan didn't just destroy himself. He destroyed his mother, his father, his sisters, his brothers, everybody. Now, he was a problem. And that problem was that he had done what he wasn't supposed to do. And so, therefore, he was a captive of sin. And that robs a man of God. When a man brings sin in the house, it robs a man of God. Now, there's a place in Malachi that says, will a man rob God? And the Bible says, how will a man rob God? He will rob him in tithes and offerings. You can rob God in tithes and offerings. If you owe 10% of what you make, and you make $500, you owe $50 to the Lord. If you give 40 and say you've given your tithes, you are a liar. You have $10 in your pocket that does not belong to you, and you will not prosper. You will not prosper. You may think you are. You may think you're doing good, but you could really do good if you would give all of your tithes, your first fruits, to God. And then we have Rahab. Rahab was a lady that was given a bad name. Why, I don't know, because I couldn't honestly say that she really was a true harlot. I think she was a lady that was stolen from Israel back years ago and carried over there as a servant and put in a place to where the king said, I'm going to put her away, and one day I'm going to come, she's going to be my lady. And because of that, I think that we have a problem there. And so that she may not have been an appointed, she was an appointed harlot, not a harlot by choice. But she put those guys up on the roof and she hid them. And why did she hide them? Because she knew the truth. She knew that God would deliver her. She knew that God was the God of salvation. So she put those men up there and saved their life. Now Rahab, she was in a condemned city. She knew the city was condemned. She said to those guys, I know that your God is going to take this city, and I want to do something different. So the woman was saved, and her family. Wow. Achan and his family were all killed because he stole. Rahab and her family were all saved because she did a good work. Wow. This just goes to show you that works follows Christians. Your works is going to follow you. You can have a good life if you don't rob God. You have a bad life if you do rob God. Works are going to come in to play. We have another book in the Bible, a little book called Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is a book that's considered a book of human things. It said, be not righteous over much. Be not over much wicked. Nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink. There is a time to dance. And the Bible talks about in Ecclesiastes, there's a time to mourn, there's a time to laugh, there's a time to dance, there's a time to throw rocks, and there's a time to hold rocks. And there's a time to do this and a time to do that. And so we need to remember that the book of Ecclesiastes is about the normal man. Now we have the unsaved man in the world today who is living like the book of Ecclesiastes makes a picture of. So the application of it is that there are three parables here. Listen to the first one. The sun riseth and goeth down in the same place. Wow. It's in the sky, rises and goes down in the same place. So we have the sun rising and going down. And then we have another thing. We have the wind that goes around continually and comes back from where it started. Wow. That is an astounding statement, isn't it? It tells us what is happening that we don't know about. And then we have all the rivers run into the sea, yet are not full. Take all the streams of the world and all of the things, all the water that's run into the sea, yet the sea is never full. The sea doesn't get up an inch, it's never full, and all the water is returning there. And we see that happening there. So we've got three little things that tell us some facts right there. So the interpretation of that is a worldly interpretation of that. And we see that interpretation. Well, we're not going to go, but only this far. These are the ones that I had studied today, that I had prepared and got ready and lost my place. And my system is acting crazy and on me. It's not doing exactly what it should do. Why, I don't know. I've got my camera maybe out of focus. I've got something wrong that I've got to find out what I've done that's making me do that, like that, in the camera. So I've got to find out what's happening to it. Now I'll have to take it somewhere and get it checked out. And we will see you next time. This is PH Tidbits from the Word. Have a happy day, and may God bless you. Goodbye.